And good evening all. Tonight we're taking a look at a creation from one of the more successful competitors in the lesser-known Group C2 class from the 1980s, the Spice SE88. Spice started as a racing team rather than as a constructor, racing chassis sourced from Tiga in the UK, and sponsored by Listerine, that most essential of racing fluids. After a successful first season, they partnered more closely with Tiga to develop a new chassis, and by the subsequent year they broke out on their own with the Spice SE86. Of which I have no photos, thus we're starting with the 88, racing not only in the World Sportscar Championship, but also on the American side of things in IMSA GT Lights, in this case running Pontiac branding and thus GM engines on this side of the pond, while their non-American efforts were generally running on Cosworth DFL power. SE, incidentally, stands for Spice Engineering, while the number indicates the car's year of development. There's no clever names chicanery here. 1988 was a big year for the team. Coming off a close-fought championship in 1987, they debuted this car to contest the longer 11-race season. No points for guessing its name, even though I already told you. For reference, the C2 class was essentially a lights class within the Group C rule set that was originally intended to run with smaller 2-liter naturally aspirated engines while hewing to a 33 liters per 100 kilometers fuel consumption metric, significantly less than the 60 liters per 100 kilometers allowed for the full-fat C1 cars. But rather than these 2-liter engines, BMW's 3.5-liter straight 6 from the M1, go watch that video on this channel if you haven't, and the aforementioned Cosworth DFL proved more popular for their greater power while still achieving the fuel metrics required. As was common for the era, the SE88's chassis was a monocoque, using aluminum, or more appropriately aluminium, as the car was developed in Silverstone, rather than the more expensive carbon fiber that some of the C1 competitors were transitioning to in the late 80s. But the Silverstonians did spring for carbon fiber and Kevlar for the bodywork, in keeping with the competition and the times. Indeed, the SE88 really doesn't look or possess any particularly distinctive features relative to most of the other vehicles in the field of that era. In fact, one could say that its looks, in particular, could do to be spiced up. I'm so sorry. That being said, I've seen the same criticisms leveled at modern prototypes, not entirely without merit, so that's just one of the joys of subjective aesthetic analysis. The power plant was another Cosworth-tuned Ford DFL 3.2-liter V8, mid-mounted, naturally, and as with pretty much every Cosworth Ford power plant, it was mated to a Hewland 5-speed manual gearbox, sending power to the rear wheels. Where have we heard that before? It was nevertheless a power plant good for 465 horsepower and 310 pound-feet of torque, and since the SE88 only weighed 1,565 pounds, or 710 kgs for our friends in metric lands, performance was respectable relative to the other cars in the C2 field. Although, when you compare it to a 962 or C9 racing in C1, of course it does seem a bit pedestrian. The rest of the setup was rather conventional, with double wishbone suspension with coils and dampers at all 4 corners, class-mandated 100-liter fuel tank, and ventilated disc brakes from AP. But what was unconventional was its resounding, blockbusting success in World Sportscar Championship competition. Though its outings in the US never amounted to much, despite trying a myriad of engine options ranging from the mundaneness of a Buick V6 to the exoticism of a Ferrari V8 stolen from... Well, actually, probably it was either from a 328 or a Mondial, so exoticism may be a reach. But nevertheless, the effort was there, and proved with great aplomb the idiocy of the labor theory of value. By converse, sticking with their tried-and-true formula of COSA power plants in the WSC netted them great results. 1988 saw only 1 out of 11 races without a Spice SE88 atop the class podium, that being the 1,000 kilometers of the Nürburgring in September of the year, when one of the works cars retired with engine issues and the other finished well down the order. Victory that day instead went to the Kelmar racing team, running Tiga machinery that had also benefited from a heavy dose of spice. Man, these puns just print themselves. 1989 saw the team move upmarket, introducing the SE89 with options for both C1 and C2 entries, but the 88 models hit the open market and sold well, with no fewer than 4 in the WSC entries for that year's C2 class. But just as the 88 season was absolutely monstered by the SE88, so too was 89 dominated by the SE89. Although Team Mago's 88 was well-sorted and well-driven enough to take 3 wins in the back half of the season, granting Spice a 4th C2 championship, notwithstanding the team and model split. 1990 brought the team further success, but that's a furtherance of the Spice story for another time. I suppose that you could say that the Spice will continue to flow. I'm sorry. For this week's call to action, not featuring the 3 sacred words of YouTube.
Like, comment, subscribe.
Today, April 12th, if you're not watching on the date of release, is the 63rd anniversary of the first orbital spaceflight, when Yuri Gagarin became the first human being to find himself strapped to many tons of explosive juice and unceremoniously ejected from the warm and caring bosom of Mother Russia to marvel at the smallness of things below. He could indeed see Russia from his house. Okay, that may not make it into the final edit, but that one just came to me. I'm in a very rare humor this morning. As we stand on the precipice of another age of space exploration, it behooves us all to remember those who helped to get us there. Both the astronauts who risked and sometimes sacrificed their lives, but also the armies of engineers, scientists, and support staff who made such discoveries possible. Also, a couple of quick admin-type things. I'm going to be changing the channel name, or I'm thinking about it, to something a bit more germane to the subject matter, just as a heads up. I haven't fully decided on a name yet. I'm leaning towards sarcastic sports car racing, because that does seem to be the tone that I strike generally for these sort of things. But nothing else in terms of branding or original content will be changing in the short term. If you do have suggestions for a channel name in the same or similar vein, or in a totally different vein, what the heck, go ahead and drop them in the comments below, and they will be taken into consideration. Additionally, going away shortly will be all the upscaled videos because of this platform's rather draconian and wholly idiosyncratic monetization guidelines. I'll be looking into ways to continue making those available through either a different platform or different channel, but that's TBD, and something to keep an eye out for in your recommendations or the search if those sort of videos are aligned with your want, dear viewer. With that, it just leaves me to say, as always, thank you for your time this evening, or whenever and wherever you are watching, and to wish you all a good night and a good tomorrow.